Mario Jumpman Mario. As the name implies, this plumber likes to jump a lot. And that certainly can't be good for him, as he's been doing it for over 30 years. So today we're going to be making sure he doesn't take any leaps of faith in his 2009 adventure, New Super Mario Bros Wii. Welcome everyone to The Games Must Go On. And without further ado, let's go. The first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to discuss what counts as a jump for the purposes of this run. Now, I decided to count jumps, double jumps, triple jumps, spin jumps, wall jumps, jumping at the surface as water, all as jumps, for obvious reasons. Although there are a few things that could be confused with jumps that actually aren't. Those being swimming, bouncing off a character's head or an enemy's head, as well as the high bounce by holding down 2, as well as propellers spins. Now, let me explain why I think propeller spins are allowed. Now, to some of you, using the propeller mushroom may sound like cheating because you may believe it's just a enhanced spin jump. But there's two main differences between the spin jump and the propeller mushroom. The first being, the spin jump is completely ground locked. As soon as you get airborne, you won't do a spin jump, you'll just do an air twirl. Now, those are two completely different things, and obviously an air twirl is not a jump. Although the propeller mushroom, if you use this on the ground or in the air, either way you're going to get a surplus of height. The other thing is, when you spin jump, you are pushing yourself off the ground. With the propeller mushroom, the propeller lifts you off the ground, pushing you into the air. No effort from you. So instead of jumping off the ground, you're being carried off of it instead. Well, with the rules out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss the route for this run. Finding a route for this game is actually pretty easy, as it's a pretty linear game. Although there are a few shortcuts that we are going to be taking. But we should probably go through each level first. Now, the first level that we're going to be taking a look at is 1-1, which we'll come back to later. 1-2 and 1-3 are both pretty easy, and we're going to be taking the secret exit in 1-3 in order to take the cannon to World 5. Now in World 5, the first 4 levels are pretty easy, those being 5-1, the enemy encounter, 5-3, and the tower. Although 5-4 we will need to come back to. Then after beating 5-4 we're going to be using the ghost house in order to use the secret exit to get to the cannon for World 8. Now that we're in World 8, we can start off by going through 8-1, which we'll go ahead and talk about a little bit later. We also have to deal with 8-2, which is pretty easy, and we can take the secret exit to 8-7. Now 8-7 we're going to have to talk about because there are some problems here. And then we can move on to 8-airship, as well as the final boss. The airship isn't so much trouble, but we will need to go ahead and talk about the final boss a little bit. But without further ado, let's go and start the run in 1-1. Now at first glance, 1-1 might seem like a really easy level. And you'd be right, we can just use the propeller mushroom in order just to glide all the way to the end. But how do we get a propeller mushroom, you might be wondering? Well, that's the problem, as we're grounded at the start of the level. But thankfully we have one tool to our advantage, that being multiplayer. By putting Luigi in a bubble, and then shaking his remote in order to bring him over to Mario, he can get a little bit of height. This allows us to kill the first Goomba and stop us from immediately dying. Then we can go ahead and put Mario in a bubble before boosting him up onto the rope bricks, and then put Luigi in a bubble and bring him up. Now that we're up here, we're safe from the Goombas below, and then we can go ahead and we can get Mario and Luigi on top of that question mark block. Now, what we need to do is we need to position Luigi and Mario so that way they're in they can be one bouncing on another. And we also need the one on the bottom to be a little bit to the right side. Once we get this, we can ground pound with, I used Mario. This pushes Luigi to the right, and it pushes the propeller mushroom out. Now sadly we can't reach the propeller mushroom. This is why we needed to launch Luigi to the right. Now we can go ahead and bounce off Luigi's head before grabbing the propeller mushroom, and then we can make our way through the rest of the level. Just make sure to use Propeller Mario instead of spin jumping with Luigi. We can do this by picking Propeller Mario up with Luigi, which allows him to use the propeller mushroom as well. Also, be sure to grab a spare propeller mushroom throughout the level and give it to Luigi. This will help in the long run, and I'll explain why. Whenever you actually die or mess up and lose the propeller mushroom in a level, you'll have to die to restart. This will cause you to lose your propeller mushroom, and then you have to go back to World 1-1 to re-grab it. Thankfully, if Luigi already has a propeller mushroom, then you can just go ahead and, well, start off with one person having a propeller mushroom. This makes it really easy to grab another one. With that out of the way, we can go ahead and finish up World 1-1, and now we can head off to 1-2, 1-3, and then off to World 5.
World 5. This world is actually surprisingly easy, except for one level, that being 5-4. Now, this level is a giant raft that has lots of enemies falling from the sky trying to kill you. And this is bad for one main reason. It's hard to avoid the enemies. Not while they're falling, but once they're on the actual raft, they start walking around, and then you have to propeller upwards in order to avoid them. And then the problem with that is, more enemies fall from the sky, and you have no ability to react to them. And this causes a big problem. This level is easily one of the hardest levels in this entire run, and I think I hate it just as much as Thief does, as when he did his permanently crouching run on this game. Go ahead and check that out in the top right corner if you'd like. Thankfully, with a little bit of skill, we're able to make our way through the level, and then we're able to proceed to the ghost house before making our way to the cannon, off to World 8.
Now we're in World 8, the home stretch of this run, and we can start off with 8-1. Now, this level is extremely difficult for this run for one major reason. There are lots of meteors that are RNG. Now, the problem with this is we have to use the propeller mushroom to make some gaps in this level. Lots of gaps, in fact. But whenever we use the propeller mushroom, we get sent directly upwards. And this puts us really close to the spawning point of meteors. So sometimes we'll get hit by a meteor that's off screen. And this causes the level to be extremely tedious. But thankfully, with a little bit of effort, we're able to make our way all the way through it, and we're able to progress to 8-2 and then to 8-7. Which is a problem.
Welcome everyone to 8-7, the home of a spine coaster. Yes, that's what they're actually called. Now, the thing about this level is, it's impossible. The reason being is you have to do platforming extremely quickly on top of these spine coasters. And if you use the propeller mushroom, you'll get a bunch of height, but you'll get it and then you'll have to glide down. And this takes a while, and you lose a lot of momentum, which means you'll basically just fall behind the spine coaster. And that's not that good, especially when you have to make really tight and precise jumps. making this level entirely impossible. I wasn't even able to get past the first spine coaster, and there's 4 of them. But that's not the end of a run. That's because we can go ahead and take the long route instead. So let's go and reconfigure this world. Now that we're on our new route, we're going to have to take in consideration a few more levels. The first of which being 8-3, which thankfully is no problem at all. It's one of the easiest levels in this world. Next we have 8-mini boss, which isn't easy. This level features tons of fire bars, tons of moving platforms, and it is kind of annoying. But it's doable. And then we get to the Kamek mini boss fight, which actually is kind of challenging. This is because sometimes Kamek will spawn underneath a block, and that makes it really hard to hit him. And it's especially hard when he spawns on the other side of the room, where you actually have to make your way all the way over to him while he's shooting projectiles at him at your slowed state, because you have the propeller, which is slower than regular jumping. But thankfully, with a little bit of practice, we're able to move out of that, and then we're able to proceed to 8-4, which is one of the hardest levels in this run for one reason. 8-4 is a water level. Now, what's so bad about a water level, you might be wondering? I mean, I already said that I can swim, and that's perfectly allowed for this challenge. So what's so bad about a water level? Well, it's not really the level itself. It's escaping from the water that's the problem. This is because at the very end of a level, you have to go into a pipe that's out of water. And I also said in the rules of this challenge that I'm not allowed to jump out of water. So, how am I going to get into that pipe? Is there no way to do it? Is this run dead? Well, judging by the length of this video still, I'd say probably not. So let's go into how you're supposed to do this. The way we're going to be tackling this is through multiplayer. Now you might remember from the beginning of the video, but in order to get height on the ground, I decided to use multiplayer and multiplayer bubbles in order to give a character a boost. We're going to be doing something similar here, where we're going to be using Mario and Yellow Toad, and we're going to be boosting Mario out of the water. So what do we need? We're going to start off by giving Mario a propeller mushroom, and we're going to be using Yellow Toad in his default state. And we're going to be pushing up Yellow Toad up to the surface of the water. Now, it's very important that he's in his default state, otherwise if he's big or a fire toad, he'll actually jump out of the water even when he's not even at the surface, which is bad. So we want him to be as small as possible. Just no mini mushroom, because we don't need one of those. So what are we going to do? Well, after pushing Yellow Toad up to the very surface, and without jumping, just barely having him underneath the surface, we put Mario in a bubble before shaking his controller in order to pop his bubble on top of Yellow Toad, and then shaking in order to get Mario into the pipe. Now it's important to note that Mario is able to get out of the water not by jumping out, but by bouncing from the pop of his multiplayer bubble. Now, what makes this especially difficult is a couple of things. One, Yellow Toad is always sinking, so you have to make sure he doesn't. And two, there is a pipe with a jet stream coming out of it, which isn't very good, because it means you have to have full control over Yellow Toad, while also having full control over Mario. So I had to get some help from my dad in order to be able to do this in multiplayer. But with that, we're able to move out of 8-4, and we're able to move on to 8-5. Welcome everyone to 8-5, which is essentially just 5-4 again. Except there's a whole lot more enemies falling from the sky, including parachuted bombs, and crows, and lava spires from an entire ground of lava. Oh yeah, and also the raft is controlled by motion controls, as well as the fact that the raft is a whole lot smaller, and it also goes up and down, as well as the fact that it's an auto-scroller. Just, you know, a little bit worse. And by a little bit, I mean it is a whole lot harder. There is one really good thing about this level though. That being, as long as you make it to the checkpoint, you can beat it with any power-up as long as you use multiplayer. Because after you make it from the first raft to the checkpoint, you can just air twirl to the second raft. And then after making it to the second raft, you can make it all the way to the end until you reach the flagpole, which then you need a boost up to the flag, which you can use another character with the multiplayer bubbles. And with that, we're able to move on to 8-6. Now that we're in 8-6, I just wanted to say a couple of things about this level. That being that it's the easiest level in this entire run. I say this because it's a vertical level, and all the platforms are just the right space to be able to propeller upwards. And it's probably one of the most fun levels to make it through. And with that, we can make it to the top before proceeding to the airship, and then proceeding to the castle. And now we have our final challenge, taking down Bowser, which actually isn't really that bad. Making it through the castle is pretty easy, and then making it through the section with falling bones is also pretty easy, as you can just propeller and just wait it out. And then you actually have the fight with Bowser, which actually isn't that bad as long as you avoid Bowser when you're actually in his first phase. And then the second phase is basically normal. But with that, we're able to rescue Princess Peach and save the Mushroom Kingdom. And we've done it without jumping. This has been another episode of The Games Must Go On. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.